how we thought to frame this panel. What is the idea? And maybe I use a word that we were using a lot in the preparation, which is what is the focus of the panel, because we decided to try to have a quite specific focus. And basically, I think one of my basic roles in moderating this panel is going to be to try to keep this focus. Yeah, and this is not a question of discipline, but this is a question of this is due to the fact that we think that this focus is relevant and not so often addressed. Okay, what's the focus? Well, the idea is we all are, for sure, in different ways, doing research, doing artistic research, or what I prefer to call or to denominate research through artistic or aesthetic practices. Yeah, if this is the case, we all, each of us, we all consider ourselves to be researchers, to be specific kind of researchers, and we decided to set up this panel in order to address the question of our social responsibility as artist researchers. Yeah, so due to different reasons, one of them probably that artistic research as such, I mean, named as such, is still a very quite, let's say, quite young sphere of research. Yeah, we're talking about 30, 40 years of tradition. Yeah, so which is nothing. And probably because of this short time, we have been always very busy with trying to understand what is artistic research and questioning what are the difference between art and artistic research. Is the same? Is art always artistic research? All this kind of stuff, which is important, which will be a conversation that will never end, probably, hopefully. But now, after this, yeah, let's say 30 years of artistic research, of dialogues, we think that it is really the moment to take us seriously as researchers in society, you know, in a community of researchers which goes beyond art, yeah, and ask ourselves the question of our social responsibility. So the point would be, if we're doing research, how do we think that, I mean, the question can be asked, of course, can be formulated in different ways, but how do we think that our research, and now I can say different things, we opt for saying transform society or has a potentiality to transform society, yeah? So what is our aim in relation to society? What are our intentions in relation to society by researching through artistic practices? Yeah. Let me, I mean, I think it's already clear, but let me ask let me work with an example. If we will be researchers working in epidemiology, this question would not be necessary to be asked, you know, because it seems like evident. Yeah, we have a pandemic. We are all trying to get out of it. So our research is very focused, no? And our goals are very clear in our social responsibility. So the way we intervene in, this would be another way, in the construction of society, in the transformation of society is clear, yeah? Okay, what about us? Yeah. What about artistic researchers? What about researchers researching by practicing art practices? Yeah. It's an absolutely open question. And that's what I have no idea what is going to happen. It's in our hands. And for now, I think this is what I would like to say to introduce the panel. Yeah, I mean, from this point, I would take position of one participant, you know, and in some moments, if I consider it necessary, I would maybe try to refocus the question. Yeah. So because it's important for us to say it's about a triangle. How do we research? What are or how are our results? And how do these 2 points of the triangle influence society? Yeah. It's about that. This is the proposal. So what do you think?
Big question that somehow popped up over the last 2 days a lot, and I will not speak now a lot. I want to give totally space to other people, because we've been talking about it over 2 last days very much, about first with Alex and his lecture, when we really started to understand how of our research, how do we research, how the quality of it, the reality of it, method, somehow how the method is being, with which predisposition do we research. Somehow it brought me and Vesa at least to a place where we realized that, of course, we are dancers, we come from dance and from practice, which is so in a body. And this is what we so much do somehow already a lot, about trying to remap our construction of percepting and relating to things. So I think that there, at least I can speak for myself, that the way we come into research is already somehow there, but now it's a question like how to put it also to how to relate again to the third place, as you said, the triangle, how to get out of the bubble, how to make these practices and the modality of relativity or relationality be transposed into places which are not, where this research is not present, where this how is not present. How can we not impose it, but how can we invite to find these places? And I think that many of us has been doing the work that reaches towards very different places. I don't even want to say community work, because it's not always being a community work. Sometimes you go with your practice to a totally random place and very random people meet you, and they happen to be from church or from a biology institute or from a sailing community. And I think that me personally, I'm very interested in creating these random meetings, facilitating spaces for random meetings, because if the place, I've been using a lot of public space, but also places which are places where a lot of different people would meet, different nationalities, different ages, and different body constitutions, and totally different groups of people, because I found these are the places where actually the biggest chance is that random people would be able to actually engage in something, and I would be also able to engage in something that I otherwise wouldn't have a chance, just staying within my own artistic community and artistic spaces. But I'm sure there are a lot of other places and possibilities that we can start doing that. This is just some sort of my very personal experience, that I understood that this is happening. This is happening if I go to a shopping mall and I install their anti-fascist ballet school. then it happens in the shopping mall. Or if I go to a church and I start, and Magdalena was also speaking in the last panel, how people were gathering under a name of a church or religious organization to sing in a protest, and they also share practice, and there are standing people who work in the offices next to people who are part of the religious cult. So also how people come together around some sort of aesthetic propositions. And I think there are plenty of possibilities, and I'm really thinking that this is also our task somehow to exactly find them, to create them, to facilitate these spaces. Yeah, thank you. I am done for now. Because it's so nice to hear from you guys, because some of us, we talked already so much, and we engaged, and it would be so nice to hear from you. What do you think about that?
So maybe I could start.
Yes.
I was one of those shadows you mentioned, Alex. I found it very interesting that you also used this metaphor of shadows, because that's what was in my mind all the time. Like watching your lecture and watching all those panels, and just like appearing as a number, viewers like 36, and I'm one of them. Who are the other people? I just wondered all the time.
Yeah.
And I also like this lecture in the dark. I think I'll copy it for one of my classes. And the question you ask, I can only answer like on an individual level or a subjective level. I don't want to make any universal statements about this. I am trying to like embrace my identity as a teacher. I mean, I'm a director and curator by training, but I also do teaching, or as we usually say, I also teach, or I also work in education, something like that. But I want to like embrace this role of a teacher and like educate the next generation of embodied researchers or artistic researchers, however you call them. And implement this thought in the institutions, because for many students it's a new concept. Also, this like first person science, or like going away from positivism or objectivism, even in the cultural studies or even in art studies. It's something they're not used to, and I hope that like teaching those classes, I will just like make it appear something natural, so they have a concept with it, and the next generation then for them it's something like they another method they know already, and it's not something like alien within this institutional context. Yeah.
Great. On which level do you teach? I mean, which ages?
It's bachelor level, but
okay.
Like they're very much in age. So like the youngest are around like 20, and the oldest like except for the senior students, it's like up to 29 in average.
Yeah. I mean, listening to you, I was thinking. So yeah, I mean, normally when I teach to MA, PhD. So and I was thinking, what about schools? You know, so I don't know. For sure, in your countries here in Spain, more and more in secondary education. So very young people, I was going to say kids, so somehow kids, they have to do research projects in school, you know, and to begin there, I mean, I never really thought about that, but to begin there, to say, well, you can make artistic research, you know? So this idea was what you were saying, first person, not positivist, no, and all these kind of characteristics of artistic research that we'll know, to begin there. It's just a footnote to what you were saying, but for sure you touch a region which is extremely influential and to be further developed, for sure.
I can add that in the Austrian secondary school system, in order to go to university, like they have to write a research paper.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, and the approaches are much more creative than later in the university.
Of course.
I once taught some, because I was once teaching at the university very briefly, And I realized, because it was really the first year after school, they were talking about the projects before. And I realized that the projects at the high school, because there was much more freedom and not so much experience what academic language should look like or what a paper should look like, they were much more freer.
It would be great that they could also do an exposition on the research catalog. I mean, not that the research catalog is everything, it's the alternative, but for now, I mean, it would be cool to deliver a paper or an exposition, right? Okay. And by the way, so thank you also for taking this in this dialogue at this first person perspective. So so what we are interested in is how do you do it? You know, what do you think? I mean, it's not about here creating theories. Yeah. So it's about what is your experience, what are our desires, what are our needs, what are our intentions.
Yes, in terms of getting streamlined when you enter the academic world, I think this is a really interesting topic, because I think especially for artistic research, that's not at all what we want. In the opposite, it's really about the idiocracy that you foreground with your artistic research, and the methodology, language, vocabulary that you develop around your research it needs to be idiosyncratic, needs to be very specific, because it also emerges from this subjective fine-tuning that I think, Alex, you were in your lecture. I didn't attend the lecture online, so I was not a shadow, but I was listening to it today through the YouTube link, and I was really struck by this focus that you have on what I would call fine-tuning or attuning the subtle body, our perceptive capacity, and make that the instrument, or that this is like core of the toolbox that we bring to our artistic research. And I would have some questions there, because you're opening up the term aesthetic practice, and I was wondering, like, how wide do you get with this? Because yes, artistic practices, I can imagine. I can also imagine some kind of contemplative practices in order to fine tune that instrument. But like, yeah, like how open is it really, this term aesthetic practice?
Listening to you, I came from going to say, well, it's extremely open, to going to say now it's very close. Actually, as a concept, it's very specific. I mean, this is my aim. Yeah. Why? Because in order to gain conceptual power, you need specificity. Yeah. Yeah. If something can mean everything, then, well, I'm not so interested in that, right? But the scope of the things that can, I mean, the criteria are very, very, I'm trying them to be very clear, yeah, in order to make differentiation. But the scope of practices that can fit into this criteria are enormous, yeah. So this is the two-way, you know, and maybe in order to answer your question and link it to the panel today. My idea, I mean, I have to say something that I haven't said yesterday, which is like, I depart from very, very basic aesthetic experiences. The term aesthetic experience, which is much more common than the terms I'm using, aesthetic action, aesthetic cognition, aesthetic practice, is the very basic of that, yeah. And I think I'm really convinced that we all, of course in different ways, in specific ways, have experienced or this or have had this experience or have made this experience of a change of relationship with the environment. Yeah, we all now I want to say studio, but you can, you know, what the studio is. I mean, the place or the places where you practice. Yeah, this can be the street, or this can be a small studio, or this can be whatever. But I think we all know this. We all know this experience of getting there and beginning to act differently, and beginning to feel, to sense differently due to the way we are acting and the way we are interacting. So also the way things begin to act with us. This is the way I'm taking in my attempt to first define aesthetic action, second aesthetic practice, and third aesthetic cognition. Yeah, and the idea, in order to link it to the panel today, is that aesthetic action systematizes aesthetic practices, allows a change of relationships between the practitioner and all these other elements present there. So elements with which a practitioner works or practices. And I was fascinated yesterday how Keith in the second panel said so clearly that for him, when he was a young man, contact improvisation was a school for developing anarchist thought, meaning other ways of social relationships. Non-hierarchical, horizontal, he said, symmetrical, he said, relationships. And this is for me the point. Yeah, there are certain transformations in the way we experience our relationships, in the way relationships appear to us by virtue of, I love this old English term, I know, by the power of acting aesthetically. Yeah. So in doing so, we experience that other kind of relationships with other kind of entities, not only human entities, clearly not only living entities, are not only possible, but are there, are doable, are real, yeah, are performative and performable, yeah, and if I take another example of the panels yesterday, was Julia? Yeah, I think so. When she said, well, doing this breathing practices, and also you, Vesa, saying this singing practices, so focusing the air and the pressure and the sound there and there and there. Suddenly, the question is, what is my body? Exactly. This is what I call destabilization. Yeah. So suddenly, something which we took for granted, something given, what is my body, clear, what is my body, suddenly is open, suddenly is destabilized, suddenly can be thought in different ways, yeah? But the soil of this thinking is established through aesthetic practices, yeah? Mm-hmm. So I think, I mean, this is the line of thought that I will follow in order to say, in order to argue that aesthetic practices have a huge and fundamental transformative potential in society. So artistic research or aesthetic research, yeah, is fundamental research, yeah, and can provide very basic conditions of possibility of transformation of concepts and relationship between these concepts, yeah. And they take the example of what is my body, or how do we relate in a horizontal way, you know, with do we need the state? I mean, all these classical anarchist questions, you know, they are not only very fascinating ideas, but also experiences, bodily experiences. And by being bodily experiences, these ideas can expand in unexpected ways. This would be my line to. So I took your question to introduce the line, my line of argumentation. But I think it's good now that in the beginning of this panel that everyone contribute to say how do you think that problem? How do you think this question?
Just in response what you were saying now, I think in your lecture you were also talking about the transformation of the system, and with the system, I wanted to just ask you: did you think of the political system or a knowledge system, or like what is the system that you specifically referred to?
Again, I changed my answer listening to you a couple of times. I would go for the social system.
The social system. Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also align with anarchist ideas of being more interested in society than in politics. It's a classic anarchist thought. Saying, I'm interested in the relationship between us, between people. Yeah. Yeah. And when I mentioned it, I mentioned so the system, body, environment. Yeah. And of course, the environment of the body, of a body, is configured by other bodies, not only by other bodies. And one first change is, do we address living bodies differently than non-living bodies? Human living bodies different than non-human living bodies? But for me, the question is, how does it feel? You know? So we were talking about yesterday about this reference to this fantastic book, Vibrant Matter. Yeah, I said yes, we can. These are fascinating ideas, but we can do more than only be fascinated by the ideas. We can feel the vibration of matter. Every musician knows that. And this is a genuine contribution to changing relationship between living and non-living entities. And all these relationships is what I would say constitute the social system, which is of course extremely complex but yeah, I mean, as you say before, so Raymond. So I'm talking through my very personal perspective, and my tendency is to go for kind of fundamental research. Say, okay, what are the very fundamental relationships, you know? And if we have another relationship, if we are able to create conditions for rethinking, reconstituting the relationship between, let's say, humans and non-humans, we are creating a potential to destabilize the economic system, because our economic system is based on the exploitation of non-human by humans, for example.
I want to just shortly refer to this, what you just said, because I think it comes to me through every panel that we had. As we yesterday talked in the night about different we's that we belong to, this question of, is there one system that we can talk of? Because the systems are so intertwined and interconnected. So in a way, of course, we project into so many different belongings or groups that we are in. But what I thought about now, and I had to very strong think about, is about exclusivity of the research practice. Because of course, the question is, how can we make it accessible, in a sense, who will have a chance to learn these new predispositives? Who will have the chance to get these new tools? Because I had to think about drugs. I don't know, you were talking now, and I'm thinking about, of course, people who are from, as also Jamila was talking in the previous panel now at 11, who is invited now to rethink the future online? Who is taking part in these discussions? This all came to me together that, of course, a lot of people who are, who could have been probably having an access maybe to a somatic class, of course, they decide to take drugs as a strategy to deal with life different, for example, and to relate to. This is also a very known phenomena. And I'm thinking, of course, and I have to completely, the only place where I reach back that I think it would be possible is to implement aesthetic practice in a very early education. I mean, this seems to me as the way, because this is something, a space which is accessible to everybody, and there's almost a certain obligation in Europe to attend school. So somehow I think that this is the only way where you can have these people still in a very early stage being engaged in something that reshapes the modality of basically everything from body to thinking. And was just observation. And I think that if we reach out too late, or if it's my question now, if a question simply, we have some possibilities at the moment, of course, in within the different spectrums of communities and systems, but to have an inclusive experience where it is not about papers that somebody's then reading and writing and just sharing in the academic context, and the hegemony of knowledge is being still solidified, but to reshape it and to redistribute it, one would have to actually start simply making people believe that the skills that they can gain are already with them. They have to be just activated. And I mean, yeah, that's what I just had to think of. I had to think very much about drugs. I mean, I don't know, but of course it's also a system of strategy that people decide to take or do. People who are not privileged very often to access certain places which are being closed. So I just wanted to refer to that.
Yeah, and yesterday when Alex, you were talking about that a change that is systemic, I was thinking this is a change, like as change from the core, that is like a strategies that start in a place and they are fundamental, like it's like going to the level of relation, it's fundamental way. And I think that where is this core? And yeah, maybe it starts with us and then it starts spreading. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, but of course, if we would have much more interest from side of educational institutions to implement artists within the education programs, this would be a huge step. I mean, it's like you don't need to be a genius to know that. And for example, in Austria, it's not very happening. So I can just say for...
In some schools, but it also depends again who can go to these schools, because these are the schools visited again because society, yes, really.
Yeah, yes and no, I would say, because yes, there are, of course, alternative schools, and most of them are private schools, you're right. But there are also places like, for example, the Children's Museum, which is really an open place and it's accessible for people. They decidedly didn't ask a big fee for the entrance, so that it's really accessible for everybody in society. And I think there are maybe not so many projects, but there are projects out there that actually address exactly that field that you're now opening up as a really potential future. Basically it's our future, right? I mean, if we go look at towards the younger generations, then of course this is an investment into future. I was just thinking for one of the exhibitions last year, I I collaborated with my son, and it was a very conscious decision to do that. It's also an ethical question because, of course, as artists, usually, you know, we are in this economy of producing art, and there, even if it's tiny economies, but there is some economy. And then I was suddenly faced with all kinds of questions, like, how would I, what kind of exchange do we have for him being a contributor to my work? And also earlier when you were talking about this very direct access for people to first of all trust in having these aesthetic abilities, bringing that to a field of art, but also I think with him it was amazing how there were like no question that I would ask myself for placing specific objects in a specific way. For him it was play, very, very pure. And I'm curious also in that connection, and maybe I can address that question again to you, Alex, because I know your work a bit, and I know that you are very rigorous in building systems, but then there is also this playful dimension within aesthetic practice. And I was wondering how that relationship functions for you, or works, or what is your way of dealing with those? Now I place them as kind of a binary. Probably they are not, or at least my experience is that that's not necessarily how it works. Because sometimes just through playing with words, I would come up with a new concept and actually then systematize in a different way. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on that dynamic between play and rigorous terminology, or developing a coherent or not so coherent maybe, but consistent language also for your practice. Because
I'm happy to answer, but I will really we're 11 people participating. I really want the others to participate. I'm going to be very brief. So when I began my postdoc, one of my bosses, a prominent art historian, said a sentence that struck me and because so good. It's a good answer to your question. He said, there is only freedom in the playground, or in the was in German, so es gibt nur Freiheit in der Spielfeld. And I thought, wow, so tell me what are the rules, and then I will be able to play football. If I don't know what is the game, I cannot move. If I don't know if I can touch the ball with my hands or my feet, I cannot do that. So for me, and this is always an important thing, I try to not get to be very clear about what are the relationship between means and goals. So the rules of football are not to have fantastic set of rules. No, the function of these rules is to allow to play. So if we play good, we don't think about the rules. We are just playing, but the rules allows us to play. So my aim as an artist researcher, I'm not a philosopher. My aim is not to build up a theory of aesthetic cognition. I know partly I'm doing it, but my goal is to lay foundations for researching through aesthetic practices. So my idea is to contribute, say, well, if we have maybe some concepts clear and they are not bothering us the whole time, maybe we can play better, much more freer, so we can enjoy playing because we know in which playground we are, So this would be my way to put it. So I need both. And I always said, well, there are artists that don't ask themselves what it is art, and this is fine. You know, it doesn't make you a better an artist or a better researcher to go for meta questions. Yeah? The point is, do you need it or not? If you need it, go for it. If you don't need it, just do your thing, you know? I need it. That's what I do it, you know? And because I also think others need it. And on top of that, and in terms of accessibility or linkability with other forms of research, also in terms of not only accessibility, but our accessibility to other systems, institutions in which colleagues of us, researchers, are working. I think it's good to have these artifacts called theories or clarifications. They are also useful, you know. So yeah. Well, as I said, so I'm pleased to moderate this panel. So I would really like to hear more voices that are not in the shadow, but in the acoustic shadow of the panel. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
I am. I did not see your talk. I just
Good.
have been busy up until now, so thank you for letting me barge in. But I am an improvising musician and researcher in sound that deals with sound. I did a project for 2 years called Sounding Bodies that's about researching resonance in and between bodies, and now I'm doing a deep listening certificate, if you're familiar with Paulina Oliveros' deep listening practice, which kind of uses ideas of meditation and attention in creating scores for attending to and interacting with sound, typically in groups. So it's like very much about connecting to your environment and connecting to groups, other people and other entities through sound. And so that's my background. But I was recently asked by I'm also run the Sound Lab at the Art Academy in Copenhagen, and I'm doing a PhD right now. And so my advisor recently said, like, asked certain people in a research to create listening protocols, which I think could be extended to like research protocols. I think it'd be really interesting to see, not that we have to stick with one in our lifetime at all, but like it could be interesting to say, what are your research protocols, or how do you engage, how, you know, whether it be how you noticed you engaged with one project or one train of thought, and to document that. Because I think for me, the role of research is really about documenting processes and being able to articulate them. Because as far as I'm concerned, I believe everyone does research. I mean, I think that like all people around the world are doing aesthetic practice all the time, but it's the researchers that, maybe it's the researcher's role to kind of be able to articulate those processes, and also maybe articulate these reorientations, if I can use Salome Voglin's terminology for that, and repositioning, or as a group of people I was working with recently just said, phase shifts. You know, as groups, maybe we notice transitions that a group notices, or a group experiences within maybe interacting or in a space or moving into another space, as you're talking about, Alex. So it was just a thought, like it could be really interesting to share those, because I've been in these kinds of conversations where there's so many great ideas and so many different approaches, and it would just be so nice to see it documented. And the other thing I just wanted to say is that, you know, in play and improvising, which I consider to be like play, you know, there's a couple of things that I find so interesting about that in relation to research, is that like the research is the play. As an improviser, I'm sure some dancers know that too. And, you know, I often have this trouble discerning like what's the research and what's the work, because in so many cases, the research is the work, or the work is the improvising itself and the play itself.
Yeah.
So, yeah, those are my initial thoughts in reaction to what was being said.
I'm doing the same because I was going to jump on you, but I mean, let's hear more voices.
Jump on me. You can't. You're over there.
Would be nice, right?
They jump on me in a bad way.
No. No. I mean, I can wait. I mean, you touched so many important, relevant points that, but yeah.
Maybe I can jump in on another thread.
Yes.
I'm not sure who said it before about working with their son and the ethics that came up. I found that really interesting because I work with my family and I also work with animals. So the idea of consent and authorship is something that I'm constantly wrestling with. How can I engage with other perceptual realities, particularly as I'm working with animals, and where am I in the work? Where's the researcher in the work when there is so much coming from somewhere else? So yeah, there's some, I'm just throwing that out there. Maybe someone has something to throw back.
I'm curious to know more about what, beyond, I mean, I know obviously the authorship is a big challenge, and also maybe just there's ethic, yeah, as you mentioned, ethically. I mean, my version of that is I worked for many years with people on collaborative projects, people who had Alzheimer's. So I faced some similar things because I claimed that they were authors of the work as well. But in terms of the research, can you draw like a line between that and what you're specifically thinking about? Like,
in terms of authorship, or
or the ethics of authorship, or the different perspectives.
Yeah. So if I'm working with, for instance, I worked with horses in my last project, and I dressed them up in sonic costumes, and when they moved, that amplified the costumes, and there you go. They're walking around, they're making the work. Don't know if they wanted to. I can only hope that they did. I spent a long time with them in order to prepare them for that. And everything went beautifully. It was a really, it was a methodology of presence, and some deep listening and gesture and feel, all those lovely things. But yeah, the question for me is, did I make that? No. So, and then in the format of authorship and putting your name on a piece of paper, or putting your name on an exhibition title, or speaking to your peers and saying, hey, guess what I did? There's certain forms of capital that come from that. And so, yeah, there are deeper ethical questions, particularly as we find ourselves in the conundrums that we do, speaking ecologically, socially, etc. If your desire is to work with more than humans to create these aesthetic events or aesthetic practices, how does that fit into these hierarchies that we're dealing with? I know I've said a lot there, but yeah.
Sorry, I was just making sure I saved that link that was just sent to us of your work. So.
Oh, okay.
That's why I was looking away, but.
Yeah.
We just wanted to just point out that Tina is one of our participants, actually of original participants of the symposium, and Tina sent us a beautiful her research that we posted on our website, so you can have a look at it, and you can have a look at her work with grandmother and with horses.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe now is a good point. I just was able to wait just a little bit to refer to what you, Jenny, was saying. Improvisation, playing, research, where is the research, what is the difference, and so on. I need to introduce a difficulty in this thought. So we all have heard this question of, well, one of the difference between artistic research and other research is that in artistic research is about the process and not the results. Okay. I think this is somehow, sorry, too easy. Not that I wanted to make it complicated, but I mean, I think, I think there is a point there which is overseen. Yeah. Although I would fully go in this direction. So, but I would fully go in this direction again in a dual or not in a this or that structure, but saying, well, maybe it's not the question that is not about the results, but the process. Is not about substituting results through or with process. Maybe it's a question that results are immanent to the process. Yeah, maybe it's that the process encompass results. Yeah, and I say that in order to introduce my point to what you, Jenny, was saying. I like to say that there is a tension. There are a lot of tension bringing these two words, artistic and research, together. Yeah, this simple gesture of putting two words together create a lot of tensions. And one tension refers, in my opinion, to intention. Yeah, to intentionality and to intention. Yeah. If I refer to what you were saying in terms of improvisation, you are improvising, you're playing in both sense of the word, and the structure of intention there is to play. You know, you play in order to play. Maybe you can say, well, you play in order to have fun, in order to enjoy. Fine, but somehow the goal is to play. Yeah. So it's an imminent goal. So okay, but in the term research, and also in the, I think in the concept of research, there is this search in it, you know, and search has another structure of intention. We search for something. Yeah, and in saying that, we are, at least this is my feeling, we are in an immanent situation. We don't stay in it. We search for something. We point to something which is somewhere else. Yeah, and there is a tension. Yeah, if aesthetics, artistic work is, let's say, characterized by this non-intentional kind of thing, kind of non-intentional way of working, yeah. And research is characterized by this intentional way of doing, yeah. We search again and again. We research for something, yeah. What do we do if we are researching artistically or aesthetically? You know, how to bring these two structures of intentionality, not in phenomenological terms, in terms of intention, of aiming at something or not aiming at something. Kant, in the third critique, came with this amazing formulation of purposiveness without purpose. Was fascinating for me since the first time I heard that. Purposiveness without purpose. He put it as a kind of a condition for possibly for a judgment to be aesthetic. And I think in this I try a couple of times to inhabit this formulation, this Kant's formulation, in order to try to express this tension, this fruitful tension between purposiveness and non-purposiveness. You know? So, and there are different ways to do that. And so, somehow, I always, in my work, think, yeah, I need, me personally, again, need to know what is my object of research. Not necessarily what is my question. I don't need a question often. Often I have it, but I don't, but I know what I am researching. And I know I am researching. I know my motivation is to put it the way you want. Know about it, well, this is not so much, but to know to disclose this object, to destabilize it, to extend it, to open up, you know. And when I am working aesthetically with it, I have to forget that. If I have this goal present, if I am conscious of this goal while working aesthetically, I cannot work aesthetically. So somehow it's a kind of a play, in my case, of background, foreground. I don't know, this is not so good, but in terms of suspending, as we say in phenomenology, yeah, suspending the goal and just play. But it's not just playing, because there is this suspension. Maybe we can also talk about the shadow there, you know. There is the shadow of this goal. I have a goal. I'm motivated, yeah. I'm not just doing this. I'm doing this in order to, yeah. However, I qualify or specify this in order to, this intention, yeah. But there is this, for me, I mean, how to organize this coexistence of just doing for the sake of doing and doing in order to, yeah. So, yeah, it is only process, but it's a process colored by certain intentionality. And that's why I like to talk about results. But I like to talk about the static results. And that's where I come to the idea that say these results are not productive, but transformational. And transformation of what? Of what is there, you know? I'm not producing anything out of it, yeah? It is by improvising, it is by recording, it is by drawing, it is by writing that the writing, the writer, the written is transformed. You know? This is my way to put it, yeah? And again, also, I'm gonna say this to me. I'm tend to say it this way. And what is our gift to society, you know? So as you say, Magda, if we, all this is nice, we can spend hours and hours talking about that. But if we wanna go out of a bubble, yeah, and address global problems, not only our problems in how do we do what we do, but problems of people there having huge problems, all kind of problems. These people there are also us, of course. What about that? You know, what do we do with that? What kind of relationships we establish with, so between these practices, all these things we are saying, and these issues out there. Are they out there? You know, this is, again, the intention of this panel.
Magdalena?
Yes. Well, because Alice just explained kind of part of my question so elegantly, so it takes some time to process that. But thank you, Alex, and other panelists. And I guess the key term that always comes to my mind when I'm listening to the talk yesterday and also today's discussion comes to like the issues of translation. So translation in a sense that because the way that we articulate our experience and then create our narratives is always through text. And this process is always a process of translation, which also that means there must be something missing or lost in the process of this in this process. So as an artistic researcher, my main methodology is an ethnographer. So I always find a great look in documenting my or other people's reflection process that somehow get into a state of like unable to articulate or just become stuck in their own subjectivity. So, well, if I may use an example to illustrate my point. So my artistic practice is a choir musician, a choral musician. I'm also a choir director. And yes, within that group, there is a process that they learn, oh, this is what we mean by achieving a good blending, a good timbre, or certain kinds of dissonance that we want to reach. However, this process, and also for outsider, that is the audience, and they're not entirely outsider, which is another point, another discussion issue, but somehow is the research action, sometimes it seems for me, is stopped there because of the temporality of music making. And therefore, that puts me in the puzzle of the practice of artistic research that go back to Tina and Jenny's sharing on the issues of documentation and also the ability of how our research can speak to other people or to explain the complex system that I found within the process. Then somehow the missing link as a beginning, a young researcher is very hard to make it translatable, if I may go back to the very first vocabulary. So I wonder what was your take on this, especially Alice, but also from other panelists that I hope I hope you can share experience and difficulties or achievement that you do in your current practice. That would be awesome. Thank you. Sorry, it's a bit long, I know.
Not at all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Talking about these places of exchange and of translations, I was thinking a lot about the moment of when you show a dance piece. When I'm in the theater and I'm in the process of showing an artwork, and that's the moment sometimes where things that I've been researching for 2 years, where I can communicate it with the audience in a way, where the what has been researched alone and then shown in a practical way, it's negotiating with an audience, and then you really, while doing it, because in my case it's the body and the voice, while doing it, it's you don't even need, you feel there is like this in between the public and the dancer and the public and the singer, and the energies of that this in between, this resonance already informs so much about inform back. So it's like a type of living documentation in a way, like living, then it informs to keep on doing, you know, also in the way, this is my experience. It's, but of course it's, so I, for me, it was personally, it was really important to understand that when I finished a work, that it's not a finished work. That in my case, every time because every time I showed it, it was already reinforming it. And I think that not only teach that this way of negotiating material with an audience, and then I want to talk about this ethics of collaboration and ecologies. I think the moment you put yourself in a position where you are not external or above an animal or another entity, or for example, you take a soundtrack. I'm now making a dialogue with a soundtrack, with a electronic soundtrack, and I treat already with my voice the soundtrack as something that my voice is not the boss. My body is. I try to really find a new way of negotiating the hierarchy between us in order to flatten it out, in order that there is more opportunity to. But sometimes there are elements that I'm trying to translate from the electronic music, and I'm trying to find it also in my voice, and it's impossible because there are different media, you know. And I'm very fascinated when different matters meet, and they start informing themselves that they are never going to become the same thing. And this is so, I cannot even put these processes sometimes into words, and for me to document it is extremely difficult to put it into words. I can just, you know, and it's always in the process. It's never, it's, I don't have clear answers for that right now. But yeah, that was I wanted to add.
I also have a feeling that, for example, to write text about somatic work is one thing, but it will not replace a somatic work. I mean, this is for me clear. So when I think that my whole research process has to be a lifelong sharing of this practice with others, this is for me actually probably the most accurate. What I can do is to really engage myself. Also what Raimund also said on the beginning, cutting with this stupid division between learning is not an artistic work, learning and teaching. For me, I learned so much artistically from learning, from teaching, from sharing actually my practice with people who have no clue about all that. And then I have to re-understand and remake all my languaging and all my strategies. And we all shared now over the time, we all came to the same conclusion. We all learned the most from teaching. And if somebody again tells me that as teachers we are not supposed to be seen as artists, or that artists are not teachers and other way around, it's total bullshit. I'm sorry, but I think this is such a sphere of our work that is so often being invisible or not appreciated, not validated. Because of course, for me, producing works is not my biggest interest at the moment, although sometimes it happens. But I think if I have to write about my research, I do. If I have to document it with a video, I do. But it will not, it's going to be just one layer of what my actually research results, if we want to say that way, is. And my real research results take 10 years probably to be transposed and maybe learned, depending on cases that we are dealing with. And I think that the best for me is just to engage in teaching workshops, sharing practice. And it has to happen on a bodily level. I can write about it. I can tell you how it feels and what it does. But if you are not going through that, I think your understanding of it will be also very different, because your position your position will be different to even receive that information. So I think it is again about this predisposition of even receiving a certain results that somebody presents to you are already a part of it, how it is going to be received also as a text, as a body of text even.
Yes, sorry,
no, I'm actually finished with that. I was just wanting to say my...
Yeah, and maybe the question is, I mean, I'm really trying to to put things in aesthetic terms, you know. And what you said now for me resonates very clearly in this, right? Saying, and I was wondering, I have to say, with all respect to of course, to you, Magdalena, and what you said, and also of the concept of translation. For me, I don't think this is the operation. Yeah, I go much more with the concept of participation. Yeah, translate, like to bring to the other shore. Why do I? Why do we have to? You know, there are other ways. There are other ways of accessibility. I think we are. I wrote a big number 1 in my notes, because I think we are touching kind of a first section of this issue, and which is the section of accessibility, because I think the common feeling in artistic research and among artistic researchers is that we are kind of aside, yeah, maybe even double aside of art world sometimes, and aside of researchers. So we are artistic researchers, and we are neither accepted by artists nor by researchers. So quite a good business, yeah. So we are. I think we are dealing with this question of accessibility, with linkability, with connection, yeah. And I think that I fully understand, or I believe to fully understand, Magdalena, your intentions. Say no, let's which is the intention I think we all share. Say, how do we make them? How do we put our things in touch with others? How do we bring the others in touch to what we do? Yeah, and we are wondering about what are the operations. Yeah, and then of course you come with the idea of translation, which is a possibility. Yeah, but taking this in the sense of bringing something from A to B, yeah, to the other side. There's a very nice in German that you can pronounce in 2 different ways the word Übersetzung or the Übersetzung. So to bring it rüber, so to the other side. Yeah. So there are 2 sides. Yeah. So there are 2 sides, and translate is to bring to the other one. Yeah. So yeah, a book translated from Chinese into German. Yeah, so there are 2 sides, Chinese and German, and the translator brings A to B. Yeah, this is an operation. But what about the operation of allowing participation? Yeah, so and if we think about, yeah, also ways of artistic learning, traditional ways of artistic learning. Yeah, I think artists learn through participation. Yeah, so it's not, I mean this like learn to play guitar in 5 lessons. This is the less artistic issue ever. Yeah, you learn to make some coherent sounds with a guitar, but this has nothing to do with art. Yeah, so these are all these problems. I mean, I have to think about Schoenberg. Is this possible to teach composition? No. And all these questions, yeah? But we know it is possible to learn. We have all learned. We are all learning, yeah. But how do we do it? I think through participation. We get, I mean, through immersion. We get into it. We go into it. We deepen into it. No one, I mean, I remember when I was a student of composition, and I was kind of going behind all composers, say, how do you do it? How do you do it? How do you organize your harmony? How, you know, and they were like terrible, because they would say, well, I don't know. Well, yeah. And I would say, gosh, you do it. So you could explain to me, yeah. And now I understand, no, no, I had to learn it. I had to dive into it and learn it. I have to participate. I mean, how to learn Schoenberg's harmony? Impossible. Well, to learn it, yeah, but how to explain it? I mean, there are hundreds of fantastic methods of analysis, but they say nothing about Schoenberg's music. Yeah. Because you have to, it's so complex, you know, and it's so irreducible. That's the point. It's so irreducible. A process, a transformative process is irreducible. We are dealing with irreducible experience is irreducible. So if this is so, translation, is translation possible? Yeah. Is there this A which can be moved to the other shore? I don't really think so. So I go much more in the to the idea of how do we create frameworks of participation? Yeah. How do we have to think the whole time? A friend of mine told me years ago that they heard some monks singing in an amazing way, and he was fascinated. He was a composer, and he went to the monks and said, "I want to learn that." And the monks say, "Yeah, come and spend eight years in our monastery." It was a real answer, you know, and it was probably the only possible answer. Well, this is difficult.
I'm really curious. Did he do it?
No.
Ah.
No. Maybe he regrets the whole life, but he did. Yeah. But what I mean is like, well, how do I do it? I'm going to put an example. Yeah. I made a work in the framework of this research project, architecture of embodiment, research framework, architecture of embodiment. I made a project or I like to say with the German pavilion in Barcelona, the construction of Mies van der Rohe, or the reconstruction of the original construction of Mies van der Rohe. And then this was a sound installation, and there were also a sound essay, a video essay, the text essay. So it was a constellation of products, of artifacts, aesthetic artifacts. Okay, then I invited some philosophers, because I want them to be part of that. Yeah, and it was for me a very nice experience. I asked them to come, to listen, to see, and to talk. They were quite prominent academics and prominent philosophers. And I thought, well, I'm asking them something very easy. Come, look, listen, and talk. You know? They were super insecure, talking about destabilization. I can tell you, until the last day before they came, they were writing me emails. You don't want me to give a lecture? I can't do that. Even the day before, yeah, they were super professional guys. They can give a lecture like that, yeah, and they feel safe giving a lecture, yeah. They will give a fantastic lecture about Mies van der Rohe, but this was not my point, yeah. I wanted them to participate in that, yeah. This was terrible for them at the beginning, because I put them in a situation of absolutely vulnerability. Yeah, I think aesthetic practices needs this situation of vulnerability. They have to give back the safe places. I know I am an authority on that. I can give a lecture on that. And simply listen and talk, you know. When they jumped and then went through it, and they kind of were there, and they were like super liberated. They said to me, well, fantastic. Finally, I was in a context where I can think, you know. This is just a way. Is it the way I do it, you know? But I bring the people to participate in what I call my dispositives, yeah? And I always say, I want you to come and talk not about my work. I want you to think my research object, in this case was the experience of spatial interiority and exteriority, conditioned by my artifacts. It's not about my work. It's about the object of research. My work is a medium. And you have to go into it, move in it, yeah? Allow the agencies of the work. Condition your thoughts, you know? And then talk about the object of research. Yeah? So I think in doing that, I didn't went for any kind of translation. I didn't explain anything. I mean, this what I call seminar began with an uncommented visit to the pavilion. And they were really having a hard time, yeah? They were kind of saying, explain me, how did you do it? Explain. I said, no, go, and you know, dive into it, you know, participate. That's my point. Sorry for the umbrella. Participate into it, and then tell me. You know? And I think this worked without any translation. I'm not excluding translation. Yeah, I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical because of, I think, yeah, I'm skeptical about the structure. If the structure of translation is compatible with the structure of aesthetic work, that's my point. You know, I mean, and just to finish, it is possible to translate poetry. You know, everyone that has translated something will say, well, I don't know if it's even possible to translate a scientific paper, but it looks like bad poetry, you know. And this is my point, you know. And I could also argument this way with documentation, but this would be another issue, and I'm talking.
Let's let Lisa speak now, because
yeah.
for some time to say something.
And Jenny will need to leave in 8 minutes, right?
Oh, please.
Yeah, I didn't know how long this would go. I'm just, when I hear my buzzer, I have to go, so you'll see me wave. But thank you for letting me.
Jenny, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Lisa, you wanted to speak to us, please.
Yeah, I just, by the way, my computer is like making the sound of a vacuumer. It's super noisy. So I hope that you hear me okay. I just also wanted to go back to what Magdalena was saying about translation also. That I'm a choreographer. I work with body politics of hardcore techno since quite some time, and I find that for me, when I'm researching, I try to always keep in mind that the people for whom my research is, that they have a body, and that my research is dedicated not to them, but to their body, and how I can transmit my research on a physical level. And it tends to force me to immediately think of the physicality of the encounter that I will have when I share my research. which physical information I want to pass, and how can that information reach as much as possible the bodies of the people to whom I'm communicating it. And that tends to, by thinking like that, at least it helps me to actually throughout my research all the time think of the encounter that is part of the research, the encounter that is about transmitting the research. And if I keep everything as physical as possible, this translation aspect is there from the beginning because it's part of the questions. I don't know if that resonates.
I just kept my response short because I want other people to jump in. But thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Alex, too.
Oh. Well, maybe it's time to jump in and say something. Just a disclaimer, I was completely unaware that I was going to be in a live panel. So just, but I think what you were saying in the beginning, this kind of like sudden encounters that you imagine that you have, that you create with people when you go out, I really feel like, oh, I've chanced upon this sudden encounter, and it's personal and it's intimate, but it's also, I have no idea who's watching. But I'm very interested in the things that you're talking about, and I was kind of like really came to observe and listen. But maybe I'll just share a little bit from what I've been hearing. I mean, I'm an artist coming from a dance and choreography background. And the reason, this question of responsibility, I think the reason I started to become an artist was because I felt I had a responsibility to my community and society to react to certain things, or to make work that was political, which no dancer is doing here in my context, things like this, like very large, grand kind of ideal notions is how I kind of started. And so then what happens with that is then this thing of like making work that is like maybe provocative or something like this, but with the body, and trying to create these kind of experiences. And then over the years, I've started to kind of really question the point of that. And then coming more into this thing of like really taking some time off, because also certain things that I kind of stumbled on making, finding that these moments of kind of intimate connection with people and very small moments of exchange really allowed for more profound, I'm not going to say like I don't know about transformation. I don't know if I can say that, but some kind of shift for myself as an artist, and also whoever I engaged with. And then I became more interested in that. And also like before, I come from a country which is kind of a Buddhist country, and and so I'm born Buddhist, but then my whole my trajectory has been kind of speaking against a kind of national militant Buddhism that has been connected to a kind of a sense of identity. And then and I had been struggling also a lot with someone who's working with the body, and then this notion that of Buddhism that is being told to us or taught to us as something that negates the body, or something that is against the sensuality, or like that we have to kind of get rid of all of that, And recently I've kind of started really going back into into meditation, because for me they were like very different practices. Like the dance and the meditation Buddhism felt like apparently they were two different things. And now I'm finding that it's actually, that's where the practice is, like with me and my body, and everything that I'm reading in the kind of like the way what's written in these philosophical texts kind of is also a lot which I've been kind of like, working with dance and the body, and then how these things kind of again translate, or maybe they were mistranslated or whatever. And then I really like I didn't listen to your whole talk earlier, but I listened to some things, and I like this thing of, it's not about, for me, the research has been not about, again, not knowledge generation or transferring anything, but kind of rediscovering for myself something that obviously clearly maybe I knew or existed and everybody else knows, we all know, but suddenly finding, like getting very excited about when coming back to the body and when connecting things I've read or I've heard, and then when some kind of sudden shift happens in my experience, which is then for a moment, it's like, oh my goodness, this is it. And then tomorrow I might again forget about it or something. But, there's those little things that happen, and then for me also, like coming back to this, like, then I've been also thinking, what is my then responsibility? What do I do? And then for me, it's also, kind of like coming back to creating this small, through going deeper into the body and finding these kind of molecular shifts, maybe, maybe I won't go deeper into everything, but just like creating these conditions for possible empathetic connection or something like this, and there was a lot of things I resonated with, a lot of things that people said, but I think I'll just, stop there for now.
Can I, it's fascinating. You're describing a fascinating travel through different stages, which I think resonates in a lot of us. What do you do when you explain all this? Let's say I'm just in your first phase. I'm just making a provocative questions to all of us. Yeah. So, what do you say, or what do you do when you explain exactly this to an activist, to a political activist, and say, well, this is something very nice, but we have big problems of I don't know, all problems, So really, are you doing that? Your cells, your molecules. Come on. People are like 20,000 people so dying every day because they have nothing to eat. And so, you know what I mean, So and I think this is an experience we all face. And I think this panel tries to exactly to go there, So,
Yeah, because actually yesterday I was asked this question as well. It was like, oh, does it mean that you are going to this kind of like Gandhian philosophy of non-action or inaction? Are you because we also talked about this concept, like, Rosie Braidotti talks about like revolution becoming a fascist concept and taken over by the right wing, actually. And this kind of like, this is kind of taken over by certain other groups, right? And then so she was like, so do you mean this kind of inaction and then non-violence? And then what do you, but I was kind of, and then what does it mean to be radical was the question as well. So I don't know, I'm not attempting to be radical, I don't know, but it's kind of like, for me, I felt like these ways of, like, honestly, if I think about it, if you go out and you make a piece like that, it's there for the moment, a few people see it, and then you kind of re-represent or something the problem, and then what, right? Then you can talk about it, you can converse about it, you can make these kind of, but for me, like, I felt like just kind of going a little bit deeper, and like this current moment for me feels like a preparation for, like, so we are now very obvious that we have no idea about anything, like everything is like the tangibility of the unknown is so much present now, like, we don't have to convince anybody about that. And so what else can you do than prepare and kind of find ways to make, like I said before, I can only repeat myself, that something like a more meaningful shift. And I know what I'm sounding like now. Even when I was talking to her, I felt like, well, I know what you're sounding like I'm going to repeat. And she said, are you disengaging? And I was like, no, it's not. I'm not disengaging. I want to engage more meaningfully. And I'm trying to figure out, what does it mean to engage more meaningfully and really ask those questions of of that. And that also means like something has to have a shift between me, and maybe it's about something between 2-3 people I know. Like I you know, the older I get, the more I understand that there's not a lot I can do. I'm a small speck in this universe, but like, you know, maybe it's just and maybe the shift is also just transient, and for that moment, and just like it goes off the next day. I don't know, but like, but I'm very interested in that and still committed to that. So it's not about disengaging, although it might feel and look like that. I don't know if I answered your question, but
absolutely, yeah. Yeah, that's the point. I mean, the term engagement is really the idea, no? Because when you move in political activist context, it seems like there is one way to engage, and the rest is not engagement. You know? So, and I think a lot of us has a clear feeling, a very clear feeling that we are deeply engaging. You know? Yeah, absolutely. So yeah. So I mean that you know, like a clear idea that political action is straightforward in this kind of, yeah. And what you are describing, I was trying to say what we do, but what you are describing, it seems like the opposite. As you say, if this is engagement, this is disengagement. Yeah. And maybe a possible question is to say, well, if we are so convinced that this is not disengagement, but the contrary, we'll come back again to the question of accessibility. How to make accessible this certainty that we are engaging to those that think that this is a form of disengagement. I mean, this is one of the possible questions.
I just wanted to insert something that, because what Venuri mentions, I have a feeling it sits a bit along this way of sustainable, long-lasting engagement that doesn't make us dead, or that doesn't make us completely tired, or doesn't, because when I observe the currents of the world, I mean, it's a repetitive circle that we are in, of course, over centuries. There's not much that we can now expect that suddenly everything will change for a long-lasting period of time. I have a feeling it always oscillates between the very roller coaster emotions of explosions and downfalls all the time. And I don't have a feeling when I see back in the history that there's been really a different option. And we are still the same, sort of, it seems, whatever system we are embedded in. And I think that people like us have been already also existing 400 years ago and 500 years ago and thousands years ago, as they've been asking the same questions, and they've been engaging in different methods that are forgotten maybe, or that maybe they carry. But I think that there is something about how you speak about your community, about making political and activist work in a very near surrounding, is exactly, I think, the cell community that we can engage with. I think also in much, without this, what we talked about yesterday, Alex, without projecting ourselves to be somewhere else, to be exactly in the present and see what are the problems and what are the changes that we can probably initiate within our own small communities, and understanding that this is as important as thinking about the global problems. And I also think, honestly speaking, that people can only get engaged if they can identify with what they engage with. I think if I try to come with my practice and say somewhere, hey, look guys, yeah, you're an activist. I know you always just believed in marching and screaming, but you know, I experienced this way of somatic touch, and actually we're gonna all come together on a very democratic level and stuff. If these people, A, do not trust, B, are not curious to step also into my side and to take part in that practice, or 3, they can't identify with it in any way because they never learned about that touch can be also a sort of healing or a sort of a pleasant agent, then I think there is no chance for me to make them even, I can't force anyone, right? This is the point. So I'm thinking that probably it is very easy for us to also understand that we need to, yes, this part of translation that is in the engagement and in the participation needs to already be there from the start, to understand where does the speaker that I'm talking to stands, where does he come from, what is his memory, what is his bodily memory, where does he come from which place he's coming. And either I propose him ways of negotiating together the rules of the game that we don't even know what the game is yet, and I let him from the beginning on to ponder with me together these rules. So let's invent the rules together for our own game that we're gonna now name our game. So to step even further down and say, I'm not coming to you here knowing more or thinking I know more and I know how to transform or change, but to invite him in a level where we can meet from the beginning on a sort of a level where we maybe can construct something from the scratch. And this, I think, is somehow connected to friendship. I mean, I don't know, to something very human also, to some politics of friendship that, or of care that we can create in our own little community where the trust is maybe also being opened better. Instead of like also going to completely unknown territories and suddenly feeling a bit like we are imposing something, or we think we know better. Like, you know, artists going into projects and thinking, oh, we have now a program to save the community. Well, ask community if it wants to be saved, and try to just ask them what they feel like doing at all. I mean, like, there is this dialogic responsibility that I think we have, first of all, to understand also where are we going into which territory are we coming, and where can we meet somehow. Yeah.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I'm so pushy with the term aesthetic in terms of artistic, you know, because it is, as you say, first of all, a question of listening. You can say perceiving, yeah. So you don't go with an imposition, you go and listen. You know, you are, as aesthetic practitioner, I think, you know, but you, first of all, are a highly sensitive being, you know, and it is exactly this power. And okay, even with this, I mean, maybe this has to do, I mean, I'm born Catholic, but I'm been very moved strongly towards Buddhist context, and this idea of non-action is this idea of which is very difficult to put in our syntax, you know, because we have to go to the other way. Our syntax is dual. We have to go from passive to active, or to active to passive, and it's not about that. Even Husserl had this problem of saying, well, this is passive. No, this is not passive. I mean, when he says passive, there is a famous footnote saying, well, it's a kind of activity. Yeah, it's not a lack of activity, you know. So in this kind of activity, and that's what I go for, aesthetic action, you know, is a receptive. You know, the power, and this seems to, and maybe this is one of the problems, it seems to be contradictory, but the power is not the, I mean, the transformational power is a kind of vacuum power. It's a kind of I see you, you know, which is, or I, this sense of I understand in terms of, I was referring to the term epistemology, like standing over, and it's very nice to talk about understanding. In terms of perceiving as a form of understanding, you know, which also refers to removing the soil. So understanding. Yeah? I think this is the way I understand what you, Magda, what you were saying, no, about friendship. What is a good friend? A good friend is the one who listens first, at least. Yeah, a good friend is a friend with which we feel understood. Yeah, this is, I mean, at least in my experience of friendship, is oh, he feels or she feels understood, I feel understood, we see each other, we really see each other, right? And I think I'm convinced these are transformative powers of aesthetic practices, which are and can only be in a high engaged mode of being.
Yeah, the work I was telling you about that I felt like, okay, this is a direction I want to move is also a piece in complete darkness, where two people come together and we have a very intimate encounter, but we don't know who the other person is. And I had no idea before when I was going in what this was allowing for. But then it was because it's the other senses that, because we have this notion of maybe we see the hierarchies, we can, make those immediate judgments when we perceive visually. And, we have these other things that going on behind us. But when we take away that, we really connect on a sensorial, like a listening and tactile way. And it's something that we're getting so much more used to looking and visual, and then to take that out is really also something that is so powerful, I felt. And this is what you said also before, like this thing of actually really going, I've really been feeling this not knowing, like going into something like with this not knowing, not coming from a place like I don't know anything, but coming from a place that allowing, like to be like trusting. It's a place of trusting whatever that you have gathered over the years, whatever your body has learned over the years, that all of that, you allow that to respond somehow by being in the present moment and allowing yourself to not know. I don't know if I'm explaining correctly, but because the minute your thought and idea and concept tries to go into it and you try to make, like, be the person, I don't know, then it kind of narrows it down and the hierarchies come in and your own self comes into it, and it's very difficult to stop. It's not really possible, but to kind of like be aware of that. And I think that has been super interesting, that shift also for me, to be like, oh, like just allow, like, for things to just happen, trusting that you kind of like knowing, not knowing, trusting that there is some kind of knowledge there. Like, I don't know.
Maybe I think it's a good time to say something. Yeah, well, thank you, Magda and Vesa, for this, bringing the symposium to us, and Alex also for your talk yesterday. So again, I think I also resonate with a lot that everyone has said, and maybe I will also share my journey a little bit. So Alex, I don't think you remember, but we met in Oxford with Shelley about 8 or 9 years ago. And that's actually where I started thinking about doing a PhD. And we spoke about the same question about that. I kind of discovered in that talk with you and Shelley that my interest is to develop develop a field where such kind of interactions are made possible. And then my search started for a supervisor and everything. And it's very funny because my background is in philosophy and Indian classical dance. So I was always applying to philosophy departments, and then nobody wanted an interdisciplinary project. So they kept transferring me to, okay, no, ask sociology or anthropology or something. And then finally I landed up in the Vienna University philosophy department, and then I realized it's still not the good place for it. And so that's how I've landed up in artistic research. So it's like when you said that, we're not in this or that, and that's very experiential for me to not land up like anywhere else. But now I find myself in this constellation where I feel like I fit in, so that's great. But also in the middle, like I tried a little bit with social sculpture, and I found a lot of resonances again with your talk yesterday in that, and also now with what Vinuri was saying about this coming from a position of knowing, but of course not know it all, but also this trust and opening up that trust. And I found that with Shelley's work, that I actually felt these encounters or engagements, genuine engagements happening. And that was something that I would like to do. And so now my ambitious PhD project is, it's called Empathy Praxis, an aesthetic study of empathy for social interaction and transformation. So that's like this big burden that I've taken on myself. We'll see how far I get. But yes, also, so ultimately, I think somewhere down the line, I also want to make this, like come up with this curriculum or something of empathy practices that I designed to share in schools. Like I think Magda, you were saying of how to start like earlier on and to really help people see that this kind of engagement is possible. And what a great like gift and shift it could provide. So yeah, well, I'm just beginning my research, and because I'm shifting from philosophy to artistic research, I'm struggling with leaving back all the theory and moving into practice, because earlier, like Vanuri said, I had Indian classical dance practice and philosophy, theoretical philosophy, which were completely different. And I tried to bring them together. And I realized that actually in a dance performance, the interaction that I have with the audience while creating the performance, which is not really improvised, but there is some kind of improvisation in the storytelling, that actually is kind of an empathy practice that I operate from. And so that was another kind of realization where I thought, okay, so I know this experience and feeling, and this through teaching or facilitating some kind of a similar field, maybe others can also be able to experience it. So through my dance, I'm able to do it to some extent. But again, the cultural context also plays a different role, and therefore it has its limitations. Yeah, so now I'm in this phase of figuring out other ways and exploring your question that you posed at the beginning. So
amazing. Wow.
Thank you, Jen Javi, for your introduction. I'm happy that you also joined the panel. Yes.
Sorry, I also wanted to just mention to Magdalena that when she spoke about translation, I just thought of a text that I had read last year by Sandeep Bhagwati, the musicologist. And he, I don't know if it's published anywhere because he sent it as part of this research group that I was in. And it's called Translating Music or Towards a Patta Music. So he's talking about patta translation, which I can quickly just read out to you what it means. A patta translation is a translation that is not focused on reproducing the same meaning in another context, but one that looks at a phenomenon from one context and considers the new meanings it can evoke in a new context. This can be a powerful approach in art making, and it can open up new experiences without necessarily creating new things. So I don't know if that helps to, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Super helpful, because in my ongoing ethnographic work, and also I do a lot of participant observation methods. So like one thing I'm trying to figure out is in Hong Kong, in the context of Hong Kong, we often so classical repertoire, Western classical repertoire has been part of our culture for a long time. So like we sometimes we use it as a you can say we contextualize it, or we can say we engage with this particular set of repertoire to express ourselves and build our community, and use it as one of the codes to deliver and express our subjectivity of everyday life. So that's already part of us. But then we are, so in my own work, I'm trying to find ways to make sense of this recontextualization, because it is not purely an acculturation, but there is more in some kind of, if I may steal the term, transforming process that form new communities or new meanings of existing cultural codes into something else based on certain context or based on certain new environment. So what does it mean to be performing that in a concert hall? What does it mean to perform in a demonstration situation? Or what does it mean to make use of it and alternate a little bit in terms of performance methods, so to speak. So it's a work in progress, and yeah, and thank you very much for your selfless sharing about that. And I totally understand of being in between disciplines, because yeah, I feel you.
I don't know how you are all feeling after all this. There's a lot of questions in the chat. So, what do you think? Should we start opening the discussion to the questions of the chat?
I think it's a good idea.
Or should we? And I was thinking, I don't know, because I'm also suffering with my concentration, and I was thinking if we could play a little game. It's really stupid. I know that talking about, sorry for saying stupid, but it's a game. And I think it's important because the questions are big, and probably we are gonna talk for a little bit. So maybe,
depending if we want to take the questions or we don't. We just want to say it's 5+5, and at 6 we have another thing, and maybe we didn't plan like 3 hours discussion, I guess.
But it's 10 people, it's normal,
Yeah.
or we were many people.
But we have to also put some limit on it. So maybe we can hear from you guys. How long do you want to still engage, and what are your limits? Because it's already quite long. So please let us know. How is your time capacity?
I might sign off just because it is
late.
Yeah, 1 a.m. over here. So, and it's very cold, so I'm going to go put the fire on and get back into bed. But thank you so much for your, just so much to absorb and to embody, and thank you for your generosity of spirit and for having me.
Thank you, Tina, very much that we could meet you, and thank you for contributing. And I hope we can once really meet, hopefully soon, to have a real encounter. Would be lovely. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tina.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Ciao.
Magdalena.
Yeah, me too, because of the time difference, but nice to see you all. It's been wonderful.
Thank you for being so big part of
You're
everything.
so generous.
We are very happy that we could have you. Thank you very much. It was great.
Great. We'll meet sometime, I hope, in person.
And we can travel.
Yes,
we have to meet. Thank you so much.
Great. Have a great time. Bye.
Okay. Bye. Okay, for the people, it's really fast. It's a 2-second game. For the people that stay, I will say a color, and you have to put in front of the camera a thing in this color. Okay?
Okay.
I start now. Yellow. Good. Okay, I start now. Green. Good. I start now. Ethereal. Ethereal.
Oh my God.
Ether.
Ethereal.
What does this mean?
Like from that is ether. It's not.
It's like nothing inside.
Yeah, great. See what it can be.
Okay, it's kind of artistic.
It's artistic.
It's artistic game.
Okay. Title?
Title.
Title is a color. Okay.
Color title. Okay. Move. Great. We have explored many colors in all its potential. Okay. Magda, do you want to read the questions?
I just wanted to say I also have to leave because in 10 minutes I have to sign into something else. I'm very sorry.
All right.
But thank you very much for this, and I will see the recording of the questions later.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to see you again. I remember you.
I just want to say serendipity. We went to college together 15 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm in Sri Lanka, she's in India, and we just suddenly met now. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
Wow.
again, thank you for bringing us together. So,
Amazing. Amazing.
This is like this historical moment. Okay.
you're already creating this field. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay, thank you. See you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Papa. Have a good day.
And I've written the reference in the chat. Yes.
Thank
Good.
you.
You can pass it on maybe to people who left. Yeah. Thanks.
Yes. Maybe we send it in an email
Yes.
because it disappears with the chat. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Can I leave or will it disappear?
No,
No, now it's
now it's forever.
It's on. It's
It's
on.
on.
It's in it.
Yeah. Bye. See you.
Bye bye.
So I think also for you, I don't know, I mean, you have to say, but also for you, probably it's good to have a break between things. So maybe should we say maximum 5:30?
Yes, let's do that. I would be very also much for that.
Or even 5:20 to have a
I mean,
little.
let's make a limit, and we have here. There are not many questions. There actually, it's like one very big question that is like being enveloped every time somebody hears something more than I think the question is growing.
Okay.
Well. All right. I mean, there was a question that I think we answered already. What can we do as artists to consciously create art that can more and more participate in the aesthetical perception of audiences? I mean, we've been talking about it now. A lot of propositions, a lot of own experience. I think that this question is being already discussed a lot. But another question is maybe a bit more something that we didn't talk about. Christoph is asking, I'd be curious to maybe hear something on the limits of research through artistic practices. Not only in terms of what it is considered as an artistic practice, but especially when. When and how is it validated? The limits of artistic research. That's the question, basically.
Well,
and
yeah, sorry.
Does it have to be? And if so, how and or why? Also with an economic question, just like every research. So basically, yes, what is the validity of artistic research? What limits does it have? And in sense of economy, probably, how could it, where is the place? Where
Yeah.
Yes, that came up now.
Yeah. I don't know, does someone want to say something?
I think my perspective is that artistic research can change economy, basically. So I think that placing it in a terms of economical system that we have now makes no sense to me, although I know that we exist in the system, but I don't want to accept it. And I just want to think that we rather try to just undergo, with our practice and with our connections, of course, for me, in terms of limits, this is what I think. I don't want to think about limits. I think that artistic research or findings and results of artistic research could influence many different structures that could potentially lead to transformation also there. So for me, to now think, how can I inscribe into that system, is a bit subverting my practice. I don't want to think about that, although I know I should. But
yeah, I think we all should. I mean, we cannot avoid.
I know.
But maybe what I want to say, so links very well to what you say. I like to think that our ways of transformations are indirect ways. I mean, transformative changes had some kind of indirect quality. So if I compare it to substitution, yeah, so this is direct. This is now is this, I'm taking that, yeah. I like always talking, I put this in terms of creating conditions for, yeah. So if we remember, and as we do all the examples we all have been giving, yeah. I was also very touched by this idea of saying what you say, Lisa, about I'm doing it for bodies, you know. So I'm considering a body, yeah. This is not an attitude. This is an action. It's a way to act, you know, that allows other things to happen, or allows things to happen differently. That's the point, yeah. And how? Well, I can only repeat in a different way, yeah. And if economic relationships are now based on hierarchy, domination, extraction, and we create conditions for experiencing other kinds of relationships, yeah. So to experience that bodies are not threatening bodies, but you know, that we can coexist even in the dark, as you really say, right? So nothing more dangerous than touch a body in the dark, yeah. I can be hurt and so on. No, I mean, situating trust where mistrust, which is highly the basis, the necessary basis of every form of authoritarianism or fascism, you know, is us, a minority against them, yeah, because they are dangerous, yeah. If we kind of foster all these kind of all of these kinds of relationships, I think, and if we do it, if we achieve a certain how do you say it, presence, yeah. It is thinkable that this can affect economic relationships, or the way we think economic relationships, yeah. This is not going to change it like that. This is not, we're not talking about revolution, yeah. We are talking about kind of, as you said, I like this, you said it also yesterday, Magda, so this idea of sustained engagement, you know, kind of perseverance, you know, this idea of being there, this sustained touch, as I said in my lecture. I think this is a way, and we need a lot of ways, but this is a way to influence, to intervene in changing our relationships, even also our economical relationships for the better. Nevertheless, I like to talk about limits, and I think it's important to, in a moment I felt it was important to argue that aesthetic or artistic research has limits, because somehow when this kind of explode and it was this kind of explosion of artistic PhDs and all this stuff, right? So suddenly artists should be able to do everything, you know? And I say, stop it, you know? No one, no mathematician, no physician, no anthropologist, no one can do everything. And this is also, this connects with the idea of ecology of practices, yeah? So if we could do everything, we would not need any ecology, you know? We would do it, yeah? The point is that we need to do it together. So we have to, and we need to do it together because each of us has limits. Each of our practices has limits, yeah? So we cannot reach what we want to reach by our only, it's like now, I mean, today I was listening an interview with the minister of science, and it was like this, again, this idea of science will save us. Are you stupid? I mean, sorry, but it's like, you still believe that? I mean, first of all, this is a belief, yeah? Second, we don't have to be safe, you know? And third, only science? I mean, this is so kind of middle-aged thinking, yeah? So yeah, we have limits. And I said the limits of our research in saying we destabilize, disclose new possibilities, but we don't fulfill them. We don't stabilize. We leave it open. Our work is to open, you know? I used to put this in terms of saying we make a negative gesture, you know, saying our work is to say no, to say, well, or not like that, and not to say like that, yeah? I used to say that until I met Brian Masumi and to say, don't talk about negativity, this is positive, yeah? So, and I say, yeah, that's good. So this term negative action didn't appear in my lecture yesterday. I just mentioned it as a negation of the negation now. So, but I'm saying we are opening up, we are disclosing new, unexpected and unexpectable possibilities, yeah? And the question in research, also in transformation, is how to get to something radically new, yeah? For all of us, it's absolutely clear it cannot be like that. This does not work, yeah? Okay, and now we have the question, how should it be? Okay, and my point is there something in between, you know, that allows to pass from A to B? Can we pass from A to B? I mean, this would be a revolutionary would say yes, yeah? I say no. First, A has to dissolve, yeah? I have to open up, yeah? Because where can the B can come from, you know? We just have A, we are there, yeah? So A has to open up and disclose, yeah? In order to see what B is. Because I think one of the problems of revolution is to believe that we know what B is. And this is a belief. Maybe it's right, maybe not, you know? But the fact, as Jürgen really say, the really fact, and we are strong in this, is that we don't know. We really don't know, you know? And our form of research is affirming the power of not knowing. It's affirming the transformative power of not knowing, of inhabiting, of practicing the not knowing. Yeah? Not to remain there, we want to know, not to remain there, but allowing the knowing coming out of the not knowing. You know? Sorry for the manifesto.
It breaks our heart, but we have to finish.
I just wanted to do this, like, because everything that Alex is speaking about not knowing, for me, this is the only one word that I can say. It's improvisation. I just don't know. But for me, this is something old school, a very word that for me stands for finding yourself in the present, finding back to yourself before you go towards the others, and being able to find this attunement within the milliseconds. So being reactive and very alert to everything that happens. The other thing, I think that we have something, that we have a power of practice, which I totally believe in. If we imagine that practices laying aside of being based on just productivity that I learned at school, like getting better in something, getting more effective, getting more productive. Also practices that bring us together as human beings, which are always based on buying, consuming, serving some purpose that is not the purposeless. It's the purpose, a target, very target oriented, that lays very often away from us. I think if we reclaim these practices that are purposelessness and we share them together from one to another, we might have a chance that people start to take pleasure in these practices, such a pleasure that is going to be laying above the pleasure of buying yourself a car. I mean, I know maybe this is a kind of a utopian thought, but I think it does, if the practice of shared practice is pleasant, if it brings you somewhere where you can again find yourself in a good place, I think you're going to get addicted to it. And I think it's good to have a good addiction. It's much better to have a good addiction than to find yourself being addicted of very different things that are being brought to you by people who completely, or by systems that completely don't care where you are and how you deal. So I think we have to reclaim our own strategies to be able not to be swapped so fast into that places. And I think this can start very personally from one to one. And this other person then might share it again in their family. And I think it can travel. I think it's totally possible to do, like with authentic movement, with practices that are very, very simple, that engage care and engage attention, engage different sensualization of yourself, and taking time for something that doesn't serve anything else, then exactly reshaping your schedule. I wanted to say, well, yeah, your schedule also, and your map. So somehow I'm very positive. I don't know, but I'm very positive that this is possible. I believe in it, not like in God, but I really
it's happening.
Stand for that. And I think this can happen if we do it. If we do it applied. So we have to apply our research, basically. Our research has to be applied research. I don't know, just sense.
Yeah,
it is already applied. I mean, it's embodied, but
no matter what conversation we're having on Zoom, always finishing and starting it, it's really complicated in a way that it feels pleasurable. I guess we are gonna get better in this exchanging big thoughts in big groups in the interface. I want to thank you dearly, and my friend and colleague Paula Montesinos is going to give a somatic noise travel through the radio. We have the link in our homepage and also in the Facebook event, and I think it's in the email. If you have gotten our invitation, our email invitation is also
yeah,
there.
because it's not going to happen on YouTube. It's an external program that she's sending her audio through, and it's going to be at 6, and I think it's going to take like half an hour. So whoever feels like still having some sort of somatic experience to sound, it's almost like a meditation that maybe puts us down a bit, or maybe kind of is a nice wrap up of all that, because we cannot have a beer now or a gin tonic.
It's gonna be like a noise massage a bit.
So
it will
a better new addiction.
Better new addiction.
Maybe.
Here later.
Okay, thank you for all the. It's from Raymond. Yeah, this is the link. Yes, that's true. Thank you, Raymond. Thank you.
That's right. That's right.
Or yes.
Yeah. A good old addiction is also good. Good old addictions are good too.
A good one, yes. We can reclaim also old strategies. I think that's also possible.
Yeah, and I hope we keep also in contact in the future. You have our emails.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, but what about that? Are you sending our email? I mean, I was thinking really about that. So
I'm thinking, I don't, for now, we kept everything in BCC, so like not to
yeah.
emails. And I think I will ask everybody around if that's okay for people to exchange emails, because we were also thinking we've got now a lot of very nice materials that are published on our website. And some people were also asking us like, hey, how could we invest in that or engage in that and also have a bit of an exchange? And there are particularly people who record like video lectures and stuff. So we've planned maybe later on this month or something to just also again do an event where we can just screen the lectures and have them also live streamed, so people can again engage in a chat at least, so that there's at least that possibility, except for just watching through the website, because we think this would be, and we basically got a very big wish to a bit keep on going with that. We really enjoy bringing people together. and the field of research is huge, and we see how many people can relate to so many things, and I think that we might somehow try to find ways to...
So once a year or twice, also because it's really interesting to do it outside and like a little bit with an institution, but not fully in an institution. I like that it's not in the theater, also not at the university, because other...
We are instituting.
We are instituted. We are instituted, and
we are
I like
not in an institution. We are instituting.
Well, but isn't it exactly the thing? This is the first step, to bring the exchange outside of the institution and not into another institution, but maybe find a place in between where we can meet and have a dialogue.
Institute. This is to institute. Institute. Let's as a verb, not as a substantive.
Institute. To institute.
Yeah. Yes.
Anyway. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you guys for participating. Thank you, Lisa, for contributing to the website.
Thank you.
We love the materials, and please, I also invite you to have a look through it, and we want to expand the website in the future, completing more things and feeding it and organizing hopefully live events for one. Would be really nice. So we don't have a newsletter, but if you also feel, please,
not yet.
please guys, if something interesting happens and stuff, please write us simply onto the symposium email,
or the personal
links, events. I don't know. We want to stay connected really much, also, of course, on different levels. And
also just to say it, I mean, if anyone asks, I mean, you feel free to give my email address to anyone, so it's public.
Yeah, there was also a question. No, but I will ask you this question on WhatsApp. Fine. Thank you very much.
Ta-ta.
It's very, very breaking heart that it's over, but I hug you, everybody, like that. And thank you for doing it with us. Alex, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we see each other, hopefully. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao.
End it.
Mm-hmm.